Hi everyone, welcome to the Criminology Talk, the digital open day Criminology Talk. I'm going to wait just a couple more moments to see if we have some more attendees arriving. We do have some people in the room, but just bear with me for a few seconds and then we'll get on with the presentation. There'll be a couple of questions that I have during the course of the presentation. So if you feel like typing in any questions that you have or answers to the questions that I ask you, then that'll be fine. But we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. I think we have around 15 minutes of questions and answers planned. So any question, there is no such thing as a silly question. So any question you have about the course, about the entry requirements, all that kind of stuff, we'll cover that off in today's chat. So thank you very much for attending today. I'm going to be talking to you about the criminology courses at the University of Leicester. So if that is what you're here for, then welcome. If you're not here for that, then you're also welcome, and I will try and convince you to attend the University of Leicester and study criminology. I'll tell you a little bit more about myself in a minute, but as you can see from this slide, I am the Director of Student Recruitment, so that is my job, is to share information about the course, but also to help people on their way into studying with us. There'll be a version of me at every university, and I will give my email address at the end as well. So if you have any questions that you can think of after this point, then I'm happy to answer them as we go. Just a little outline of what I'm going to talk about today. A little bit around what criminology is, although I'm sure you probably study it already. But it's always a good idea to have a basic understanding of what criminology is. I'll tell you a little bit about us as an institution, where criminology sits within our institution and where we sit within the wider landscape of universities in the UK. I'll talk to you a little bit about the way that we teach and the way that our research as academics informs that teaching. I'll tell you about what the phrase research-inspired teaching means. Then we'll go through a little bit around the courses, so what you can study, the specifics of studying at Leicester, and then we'll talk about careers as well, because obviously going to university and studying criminology has an end goal. And I'll talk to you about study abroad opportunities as well, if you're interested in that kind of thing. But if that's okay, I will proceed from here. Again, just to say, it's very nice to be connected with you. It's almost a sort of a retro feel being in an online space, because I have memories of lockdown and COVID and all that kind of thing, but it's very nice to be connected with you. Like I said, my name is Ben. I am Director of Student Recruitment for Criminology at the University of Leicester. I have studied criminology for almost 25 years. I started studying criminology the same month as the 9/11 attacks. So I started at a really interesting time in criminology around extremism, around violence, around terrorism, that kind of thing. But it's very nice to share the virtual space with you. I think it's great that we are able to offer these digital days, because getting to a site visit can sometimes be difficult, although you're always welcome to come and see us at any point. But I have a question for those listening, and I'd like you to have a little think about it and maybe drop an answer to it in the chat, and I'll get to it as we get to the Q&A. But why are you interested in studying criminology? I've got some more questions on that a little bit later on, but why criminology and why Leicester? I'll tell you a little bit about why I decided to study criminology. There was a couple of reasons. The first one was I didn't really know what I wanted to study, but I wanted to be interested in the thing that I studied, and I think criminology is interesting. So the easy answer is it is interesting. The longer answer to it is my dad was a police officer, and I was really interested in his day-to-day job. So when I was younger, I had kind of somewhat a binary idea of goodies and baddies. There is good and there is bad. And then the more I learned about my dad's job and policing in general, I realized that there were different nuances within that, and I was really interested in that process. And it's something I'm still interested in because I'm still doing it. So it was partly a thing with my dad. I didn't think I could be a police officer, but I was interested in the kinds of things that he did. And why Leicester? For me, obviously, as an academic, I never studied at the University of Leicester, but I was always aware of Leicester's strength in criminology, and we'll get to that at the end. And I was attracted to teaching rather, and researching at a place that had a strong tradition of criminology and was well placed within the country. So it's a strong team. a very strong degree program within the university, so I was attracted to that. You want to be at the best place you can, and that felt like Leicester to me. So that's it for me. But why for you? I'm very interested in that. So put your answers into the chat if you do. In terms of the purpose of my talk, it kind of covers different things, and I'll go over this relatively quickly, but there are lots of purposes for me talking to you today. If you're certain that you want to study criminology, then I want you to convince you to come to the University of Leicester for the reasons I've just outlined. It's excellent. It's the best course at the University of Leicester, and that is statistically true as well as symbolically true. If you're not certain about the subject, then I'm going to try and convince you that criminology itself is the subject that you want to study. That may be with us, that may be with other people's. If you're not certain about coming to university, then when we talk about the employability stuff, then maybe I can convince you that there are benefits to undertaking a degree. So whatever your situation, whether you're certain about the topic, whether you're not, or whether you're not even certain about coming to university, hopefully I can help you along with that program. Just a little bit about the university more broadly, but we are on the crest of a wave in terms of where we're seen nationally. So we are University of the Year for the Daily Mail. We've been shortlisted twice for the Times Higher Education and Sunday Times University of the Year. We've been awarded TEF Gold. TEF probably means nothing to most people, but it's the Teaching Excellence Framework. Universities are judged on the quality of their teaching in the Teaching Excellence Framework. Gold is the highest standard that you can have. So by putting it bluntly, I guess if you come to the University of Leicester, you will have excellent teachers, and that is across all subjects. And in terms of the NSS, the National Student Survey, that is a survey where students reflect on their times at university, and we are placed very well in the UK within that kind of thing. So an independent student survey, an independent judgment of our teaching, but we're also University of the Year. So we're in a good place. In terms of our school reputation, we're 6th in the Guardian League table and 25th in the Complete University Guide league table. I won't do too many sort of stats and hard sell stuff with you, but we have excelled in criminological teaching for more than 30 years. And as I will explain a little bit later when we talk about the research-inspired teaching, you will be taught by the people who are experts on the areas that they teach. As a small example, my research interest is in around fear of crime and violence, and I teach a fear of crime module and I teach a violence module. So I teach on the things that I have done my research in, and that is across the board within this school as well. As I said already, it is absolutely true that criminology is the highest ranked subject available at the University of Leicester nationally. So we are very proud of that. And I will tell you till the cows come home that we are the best degree that you can do at the University of Leicester. So if you want to come to study criminology, you can tell all your other subject mates that is also true. So what is criminology? I will answer this question for you, and again you can think yourselves around what criminology might be and what it might mean to you, but very basically this is an Edwin Sutherland description of what criminology is. But in order to commit a crime, one has to break a law, and in order to have a law, one has to make one. So when we talk about criminology, we talk about the studying of laws. We're talking about the making of laws. So who makes them? Obviously, we have the criminal justice process and the division of powers, but we also have social norms and values. So how we make those laws and how we change them. Then we need to consider how people break them and why they break them, the types of laws that they break and the ways that they break those laws. But equally, we have to consider how we as a society respond to those that break those laws. There are lots of different ways that different societies respond to the breaking of laws. So some societies have quite high levels of imprisonment. The UK would be an example of that. And some societies have very low levels of imprisonment. Finland would be a very good example of that. Imprisonment is not the only way that we can respond to the breaking of laws. It's also an interdisciplinary subject. So there's a slide that says this in a second, but you can be anything and be a criminologist. So there are elements of sociology, there are elements of law, psychology, social policy. I've had colleagues that have been architects. I've had colleagues that are historians. So as long as you're interested in crime, you can be a criminologist. We have one of my colleagues who's interested in criminology is entirely in the media. So they're interested in representations of crime in film and that kind of thing. So if you're interested in crime, whether it's real, whether it's fictional, you can be a criminologist, and you can come to criminology from any perspective or field that you choose to. So we are a convergent topic. So this is what I always say about criminology, that it's not a subject, it's a topic, because you can be anything. So obviously the different interests that you can have, the expertise, the ways of studying, different political standpoints, different philosophies, all of those can differ, but they converge around a focus on crime. So as long as you're interested in crime, criminology will be an interesting degree for you. So like we said, we talked to excelled in criminology, teaching for more than 30 years. The interesting thing that I'd like to talk about with this is that we've moved into a brand new building. All of us are, we were spread over a couple of different places, but we're now into one specific building. And it's very nice because we can kind of make it our own. We have a crime scene room, which I'll talk about a little bit later on, when you can dust for fingerprints and search for DNA, that kind of thing. But part of that is down to our ideas around research-inspired education. Like I said before, we have more than 30 members of academic staff, and you will be taught by an expert in the field of research. And this largely describes our research enterprises. So we look at inclusive, just and secure societies, but we also look at healthy, resilient and sustainable futures. So we have both a retrospective evaluation of the world in which we have, but we also have a sort of pragmatic view of changing the world for the better. And this is a sort of a larger encapsulation of our research activities. In terms of what you can study at the university, you probably know this already, but you can study one of two undergraduate programs. We have the Bachelor of Science in Criminology and the Bachelor of Science in Criminology with Forensic Psychology. So the difference between those two is quite clear. The BSc in Criminology tends to be a broader look at criminology, a slightly wider look with a little bit more optionality within the program. If you are interested in criminal psychology specifically, then the Criminology with Forensic Psychology is the degree for you. It focuses specifically on psychology related to crime and criminal behavior. So different to a normal psychology degree in the sense that you would have a broader look at psychology. This one focuses specifically on criminal psychology. So if that sounds like it's you, then that course would be the one for you. I'll give you a breakdown of the courses very briefly in a second as well, but we do a thing at Leicester that we call 360-degree criminology. It's a very fancy graphic. But it kind of gives an idea. This isn't everything that we teach or can teach either. It gives an idea of the breadth of topics that we can study. So again, take a look at this and you can probably see something that you'll be interested in for yourself. So everything from victimology to organised crime, to rehabilitation, to violent extremism, to policing, to criminal justice systems, to prisons, to cybersecurity, all of those things. So we can look at a complete view within the teaching at the school, because we have so many academic staff with so many different research interests, and that feeds into our curriculum, which you'll see in just a second. So this is the program for the BSc in Criminology. I won't go through this in a huge amount of detail because nobody needs me reading out module names, but essentially in year one you get a good grounding. Whether you've studied criminology or not, you get a good grounding in the theories of crime, in how the criminal justice system works, an introduction into the core debates of criminology and the experiences of victims. Moving into the second year, we talk about prisons and punishment, with punishment and rehabilitation. We have research methods, which are essential in training you to become a criminologist. And then all of the modules that have an O in a bracket next to them would be optional modules. So they are things that you can choose to do. So if you're interested in organised crime, you can choose to do that. And if you're interested in sex and violence, you can choose to do that. Into the third year, the only core modules in the third year are based around your dissertation or your research project. Everything else is optional. I teach the violence module in year three, which is the best module, so you definitely need to take that one. I propagandize that module at the earliest possible point. Then you can pick any of the other boring modules around that aren't my excellent module, which you definitely should choose. And then in the second semester, you can do drugs and crime, or if you're interested in things like animal poaching, you can choose green criminology. So there's a massive breadth of things that you can study. That's the BSc in Criminology program. So if you're interested in the Criminology with Forensic Psychology, the program is slightly different in that because it is a Criminology with program, you essentially have two main streams. So there's slightly less optionality within this, But the structure of the first year is virtually the same, with an introduction to forensic psychology in place of introduction to criminology, as the other degree had. Then you have punishment and rehabilitation, again shared between both degree tracks, and the research methods is shared between both degree tracks as well. But in the second year, you have 2 more core modules for the forensic psychology focus: investigative psychology and forensic psychology in the courtroom, both absolutely excellent modules for understanding how psychology plays a role in those 2 things. Into the third year, quite similar again, but you have your research project, your dissertation. You also have 2 core modules using psychology in secure settings. So that is led by somebody who was a prison psychologist for more than 20 years. So there is nothing they don't know about using psychology in secure settings. And then criminal justice and mental disorder. That is where, if you have, like many, consumed Netflix documentaries around true crime and are interested in psychopathy, that is exactly where you can find the information about that kind of thing within that mental disorder module. And then again, we have the best module, the violence module. You can still choose that on this degree track, and you can choose many others as well. So there's still optionality as you go into the third year, but with that focus on forensic psychology, it's an excellent choice if you want to do that kind of thing. I'll get now on to talking about what it's like to study at Leicester and the kinds of ways that we support you. So another question for you would be, and please feel free to type your answers into the chat. I've asked you already why you want to study criminology and why you want to come to Leicester, but what do you want to know and what are you hoping to learn? That could be, some people have really specific ideas about what they'd like to learn, and other people have much broader ideas. So what would you like to know, or what have you not learned so far in your education up to this point that you're hoping the degree expands upon? So feel free to have a think about that and put your answers into the chat. So something I always like to talk about is the construction of crime. Now, this is a core debate that we'll have in the first year of your degree, but crime does not exist, only acts exist, acts giving different meanings within various social frameworks. It's something that I always like to talk about in my violence module, in that Jenny is helping me out on this broadcast. I don't know if you can see her, you probably can't, but she's helping me out. If I threaten to punch Jenny in the face, that would probably be a problem for my employment. I don't think Jenny wants to be punched in the face. I think people would probably dislike me for it. I'd probably, hopefully, get sacked if I did it. But if Jenny and I were MMA fighters and we had agreed to meet in the octagon, and then we started punching each other in the face, we'd get money for it. Once Jenny had pummeled me to the ground, and I had submitted to her powers, Jenny would then get a belt that says she's the champion of the University of Leicester MMA fighting. She'd get extra money, and she might get a belt, a golden belt to wear as a symbol of her victory. So the idea of punching someone in the face is not universally condemned, because it really depends on the context. The same sort of thing would be if you happen to shoot someone. There are lots of contexts in which shooting someone would be bad, but there are other contexts in which shooting someone would be perfectly okay. For example, if you're a person walking down the street that happens to have a private weapon and you want to murder someone, that is obviously illegal, and hopefully you go to prison for a very long time. But if you were trained by our government in the armed forces, you were sent overseas to fight wars that our government have decided that we have to fight, then you might get a medal for shooting someone. So it would be perfectly legal, perfectly well trained. Obviously, there are rules within war as well, but context is really important. So the things that we decide are criminal are really up to us as a society, and these things change over time. So again, have a little think right now. There are things that are now illegal that didn't used to be, and there are things that are no longer legal that used to be as well. So crime and criminality, what was considered crime and criminality, changes over time. I think probably the most famous example of that comes from 1967, would be that on one particular day in 1967, it was illegal to be in a loving relationship with somebody of the same gender as you. On another day in 1967, it wasn't. Did that change social attitudes immediately? No, it didn't. But the law changed because someone said it did and they wrote it down. So laws and things change over time. Sometimes it follows social norms and values. Sometimes it follows trends. Sometimes it follows medical evidence. So in the 1960s, it seems like it was an interesting decade. In the 1960s, you could get heroin on the NHS. You can get now opioid substances on the NHS, but drug prohibition is a relatively new phenomenon. But we sort of decide what is illegal and what isn't. So again, it depends on the context. And as long as we understand that, then we can sort of go forth within a degree and have lots of interesting debates around what should be and what shouldn't be. And those are always interesting classes in the first year. In terms of how you're going to study and the sorts of support opportunities that are coming to you, I can go through those sorts of things right now. We have core modules, and there'll be approximately 115 students per course, between 100 and 115 students per course. So that would be 100 on criminology and another 100 on criminology with forensic psychology. So there's approximately 200 as a total cohort if you have the two courses together. So your largest classes in lectures would be around 200 students. You might have lectures of around 100 students if they're course-specific lectures as well. But then you'd have small group teaching, which could be anything from 15 to 30. So more classroom-based teaching, seminars, that kind of thing, a bit more discussion-based. So both large and small group teaching, as well as discussions with your personal tutor. So you'll be assigned a personal tutor as soon as you come to us, and they will still stay with you for your 3 years of study. And you'll have one-to-one opportunities twice a semester with them as well. We focus, I won't get people to put their hands up because I can't see you, but put your hands up if you like exams. Okay, nobody put their hands up. Brilliant. We don't have any exams. We focus on what we call authentic assessments. So we try to create assessments that will examine and assess the kinds of skills that you might need in the workplace. And I have been in the workplace since the 1990s, and I've never had to sit an exam at work. And I've never been locked in a room at work and asked to tell someone everything I know with no reference material. So it doesn't seem very authentic. So we try to focus on authentic assessments. Sometimes they involve creativity, sometimes they involve group work. They often involve writing, because that is a key skill, whether you're writing a long piece of work or whether you're writing an email. In terms of facilities, we have a criminology student-only study space, which is a locked room that your card will have access to, where you can leave your bags in the lockers, you can print your work out, you can use the computers, you can have a cup of tea from our tea and coffee making facilities, or as many students do, they go to sleep on the sofas. It's entirely up to you what you decide to do with your own study space. We also have a crime scene room. So in the basement of our building, there is a room set up as a student bedsit. There is a living room and a bedroom area. And within that space, depending on, it's a modular thing, but if you're on the module, you will be wearing a hazmat suit, you will be dusting for fingerprints, you'll be searching for DNA, and you'll be solving a crime as a crime scene investigator with one of our lecturers who is a former CSI and is an excellent crime scene investigator. So real live student study spaces, that kind of thing. We also have our digital learning environment, which you'll be very used to probably within your current education environments, but our digital learning environment has all of the readings that you would need electronically linked. You are not, at any point, should you not choose to, you don't have to go into the library to find a physical book. Everything you read will be linked digitally. That's part of our policy. But you also get guided activities, guided reading activities, guided learning activities, as well as the live face-to-face teaching. So there should be no confusion as to the kinds of things that you want to do on a day-to-day basis. In terms of employability, so any kind of degree needs to go somewhere. You need to do something with it. So employability is very important as well. There are lots of different things that people do. This is not going to be an exhaustive list of places that people can go, but civil service is definitely one. Roles as well. There are some standard things, especially in the criminal justice sector. So police force, prisons, probations, legal roles, so paralegals. But we also have students that go on to do law conversion courses. I have a former dissertation student of mine who now works as a lawyer for the Crown Prosecution Service. So obviously criminal justice sector roles as well. Community development, social research, counselling, third sector, so charity work is very common as well. I have quite a lot of former students that are primary school teachers, believe it or not. But the world is your oyster, and you can choose to do something directly related to the criminal justice sector or something outside of that as well. So I'm happy to take questions on careers and possible trajectories as well. Here's just a little example of the places that people go. Some of these are kind of obvious, as in, Derbyshire Constabulary, Staffordshire Constabulary, Foreign and Commonwealth Development Office, that kind of thing. There are other ones in there as well. So there are private security firms in there, but we've also Hastings Direct. It might seem strange for someone to work for an insurance company, but that essentially deals with fraud. So online fraud, insurance claim fraud, that kind of thing. All of those things are very important. So some of our students go on to do that kind of thing as well. I'll talk very briefly about the potential of studying abroad. So again, if this is something you've thought about, then your ears will prick up at this moment. But if it's something you haven't thought about, then perhaps you should. I studied abroad as an undergraduate, not at the University of Leicester, but I studied in the United States. I went to Charleston in South Carolina, which was a fantastic experience. I learned lots of good things. I had some really interesting experiences. I have a godson called Benjamin, who is a direct result of a friendship that I made in my study abroad years. Being in South Carolina, it's in the deep south of the United States. I was invited to join the Ku Klux Klan within 24 hours of arriving in South Carolina. I didn't join, before anybody feels like judging me too harshly on that, but it was an incredibly interesting experience. You get to immerse yourself in a different culture, different environments. So there are examples on the screen. So we've got Oslo, Amsterdam, and California. Those are not the only places you can go. They're just places where we have sent people. It's not something that you need to apply for at this stage. You essentially apply in your second year of study here. So you don't need to do anything different in your application, but you will get the chance to apply to do it in your second year of study. There is a study abroad team centrally that support people through that application process as well. So just have it in mind that you could extend your 3-year degree to a 4-year degree if you wanted to, and you could have that experience overseas. We only ever send people to English speaking places. So if you don't already have another language, there is no obligation to have another language. So we send you to places that teach and assess in English. But fantastic opportunity should you want to do something like that as well. Just before I finish and ask if anybody has any questions, this is my email address. I'm very happy for you to get in touch with me directly if you have any questions about the course. If you have any questions about the application process, I often field questions around personal statements. For some reason, FE college tutors are obsessed with personal statements to the point that they make you rewrite them 30 times, but I'm happy to offer my own advice as the person who has to read them when they note that down if you want to. Like I said, there is a version of that, a version of me at every university. The last thing I'll say before I open up for wider questions would be that we do have offer holder days as well. So if you make an application and you are lucky enough to receive an offer from us, we have another day where you're invited to the university to come and sit through essentially 2 real classes. A day in the life of a student. Essentially, we'll give you a lunch and we'll have another chat with you. But that's a really good day because it's a little bit more topic related than this, because this is I've just been talking at you, telling you about the course. But if you want to have a little sample of the teaching, then that would be the way to do it. If you are unable to come to a live experience, as in a face-to-face experience, we do also offer a digital offer holder day. So if you are more comfortable or are unable to come to a face-to-face, there is a digital version of that as well. So hopefully, and we will gladly welcome you back to one of those occasions as well, should you wish to come. And the last slide I've got is just for me to ask if we've got any questions. So if you do have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Just as it happens, the person on the left there, the short-haired ginger person on the left, is one of our students from last year. So we have an actual criminologist in the slides as well. How about that? But please feel free to drop in any questions should you have them. Is there an option for a placement year? Great question. We don't offer placement years within our course. It is still possible to find placements. I'll go through where you might be able to find them in a second as well. Generally speaking, we don't offer placements purely on a logistics basis because we have so many students and we have quite a lot of international students as well. The types of placements that would be useful are often only for British passport holders, especially within the criminal justice sector. So if we can't offer to one, we'd rather not offer to anyone. So if we have to exclude some people from it, we would rather not do that. But the structure is there with the gaps between the teaching. So you have quite a long period of time over the summer that we can help and assist you getting summer placements as well. But an actual placement year doesn't exist within our particular course. We obviously have the study abroad year, but our careers team could help you find holiday-based placements, and you can also do placements with us as researchers if we've got research going on at the time as well. It is an excellent question. I hope that answers your question. When studying abroad, you get given a work placement by the owner, you have to look for it yourself. So you would be assisted in finding the place. We essentially have some I'll read the question out actually in case anybody can't hear it. So when studying abroad, do you get given a work placement by the uni, or do you have to look for it yourself? The study abroad, you would be found a place. So you can tell someone that that's where you'd like to go if you've ever gone there before, but we essentially have reciprocal relationships with universities around the world, and we can send you to one of those. So you'd probably be given a list of places that you might be able to go, or if you have a specific place in mind, they might help to try and set up a reciprocal relationship. You do not need to do any of the legwork for that at all. It's all done for you. So that you'll be given a tutor within the study abroad team, and they will assist you in finding that place. I very much recommend trying to do that kind of thing, because study abroad genuinely changed my life. It was a fantastic experience. So if you are able to, I would definitely do it. The only thing about study abroad that I would say is a consideration would be you essentially would be with your cohort of people from the University of Leicester for 2 years, and then while they do their third year and graduate, you would do your third year abroad. So when you come back to studying at Leicester, most of your cohort would have moved on. So you end up making new friends in your year abroad, people you've never met before, but then you would be in another position that you need to make friends with new people when you come back to the University of Leicester as well. If that's something that is not daunting for you, that would be a perfect thing. If I did law with criminology, okay, if I did law with criminology, what criminology aspects would I be studying? Fantastic question. In the first year, it would be intro to criminology, so the sort of fundamental discussions around the construction of crime and that kind of thing. After that point, it very much depends on what law modules you study. I get a lot of law with criminology students on my violence module, for example. I think I've got about 10 or 15 on my violence module, but it depends on what law you're studying, because obviously there are different aspects of law and different optional modules within law, but sometimes that might have clashes with some of the teaching for the criminology courses. But generally speaking, everything on my slide that had an O next to it, so an option module, you would have the chance to study if it doesn't clash. So again, you can pick quite interesting things. But yeah, does that answer the question? I hope so. I'm happy to answer more if you have them. Let me see, is there more questions? What jobs have your students got after this course? It's really various. It's a really good question, because obviously we want the sort of we want the job after the course. So I have students that are police officers, I have students that are probation officers, I have students that are prison officers. I have a student who called Henry, who is an airline pilot. You needed to have a degree in order to do your airline pilot training. He decided criminology was the most interesting degree. He always wanted to be an airline pilot, and just happened to come and do a criminology degree. I have students that are lawyers. I have students that have gone on to do conversions into psychology and are on the track to becoming a clinical psychologist. Quite a lot of students go on to do further study, so master's work, that kind of thing. As I said before, I think I've got at least 3 students that are primary school teachers. I have another student that works for a bank. They work in the anti-fraud department of a bank. Other students go on to do completely separate things. Genuinely, there's a student who is a YouTuber. They have more than 100,000 followers on YouTube, and that is their full-time job. They are an influencer of a sort. Very good student. Really interesting life, but it's all out there online. So there's all sorts of things that people can go and do. I always think Whether it's a criminology degree or not, a degree in general gives you shows a capacity for learning. So you can apply those skills in a transferable way to lots of different situations. But obviously it has a particular focus on the criminal justice system, lots of charity works and that kind of thing. Do we have to do presentations? If so, is it in groups or individually? That is a very good question. You do get to do presentations. A lot of the time these days, they tend not to be sort of in-person presentations. What you might do is create a set of slides and then do a voiceover over the slides. The presentations that I've asked people to do in the past have always been individual. I do prefer individual presentations to group ones. Although I will say, just as a caveat, that the closest example of what it's like to have a full-time job would be a group presentation at university, because you get put with 5 people. You have the person who wants to be in charge that probably shouldn't be, you have the person that actually is in charge, then you have the person who does nothing, and then you have the person that never turns up. And that's very much what it's like to have an actual job. And it's probably the best indication of what it's like to have a full-time job before you leave university. But it will be a mix of things. So there will be group work involved. So I know for the victims of crime module in the first year, there is a group work in producing a poster for a victim campaign. So victimization for a particular type of crime, that is a group activity. But being able to work as part of a team is a transferable skill, no matter how infuriating it is. It is something that is essential to work life. Most of the work that you do will be on an individual basis, so you get the direct result of your work. I hope that answers the question. But yeah, presentations, there aren't that many, as in I think there's one for the undergraduates. But again, it's a skill that is worth having. Every job I've had, obviously as a lecturer, presentations are fairly ubiquitous to my job, but every job I've had has required some element of presentation. So when I worked for the Home Office, it was presentations to police forces. When I worked for the police, it was presentations to other police officers and that kind of thing. So presenting your ideas verbally is a very important thing. That could be a transferable skill in a meeting, so not a presentation per se. But it's a very good transferable skill. And if it's any consolation, so I am presupposing that the question is perhaps because you don't like presentations. I get nervous before every time I teach. I was very nervous before doing this. It may not look like it because I hide it very well. But I get nervous every time. I've taught for 15 years and I have never not been nervous for doing it. Every time I do a presentation, I'm nervous, but it just goes. It's you just sort of get used to it, I think. But the nerves for me have never gone away. So if that's something you're experiencing, they do diminish, but you can still do something confidently and effectively, even if you are nervous. I don't know if I'm making you more nervous or helping. We shall see. Any other questions? Have I missed some questions? Yes, I need to keep scrolling down. Thank you, Jenny. If we put this uni as a first choice, does it help to get onto the course if we don't reach the grade requirements? Very good question. Yes, it does. Is a very short answer to that. We, as a university, prioritise firm choices. We would rather have a cohort of people that wanted to be with us than a cohort of people that achieved excellent grades but didn't want to be with us. So yes, putting us as a firm choice is a very good thing, because in the first round of, apologies if you can hear a big dog barking in the background, by the way, I have 3 dogs and they've all gone crazy. Yeah, we prioritize people that want to be with us. If you're worried about this kind of thing as you move forward, please take my email address down and stay in touch with me. I had 3 emails today from people that visited on open days asking me about the course for various reasons. One of them was about grade entry requirements and that kind of thing. But we prioritize firm choices, so I hope that's answered the question. Do I apply through the university or do I have to apply through a different way because I'm trying to apply from Canada? That is a very good question to which I do not know the answer off the top of my head. As an international student, I think you can probably still do it through UCAS. So UCAS is the mechanism by which UK students apply for university, because when we get UCAS forms through, it still shows us international students. So I'm assuming that that would include you. But my Canadian friend, if you could take my email address down and make contact with me there, I can give you a proper answer to that question when I've got all the information to hand. I assume it would still be through the normal mechanisms of UCAS, but I can find out for you if that's okay. Great question. And once I find out the answer to that question, I will always remember the answer to that question. But if that's all right, I shall do that. Are there no exams in the first year or in the subsequent years as well? Great question. No exams at all. There are exams on law. If you're doing criminal law with criminology, there are exams on law. But in terms of criminology, on either of the courses, there are no exams. None. I'm hoping that people are dancing with delight at that kind of thing. But yeah, I've never set an exam and I've never wanted to for any of my courses. Thank you, Jenny. Jenny's just put my email address in the chat as well. So I know I've said to a couple of people to email me. So Jenny has put it in the chat in the reply to the international student application question. Any other questions? I'm on a roll. But I think if not, we've timed this pretty well. Because I know I need to let Jenny go off and do other things later on. She's the person in charge behind the scenes. If you can't figure out why I keep talking about Jenny, I'm being controlled by other powers. But it's been really nice to have you on the call. I know I can't see your faces, but my email address is on there. So if you want to get in touch, and if I haven't answered your questions in the way that you wanted to, please do feel free to send me an email. I will reiterate the offer holder days. So I'd imagine the student from Canada, you don't necessarily want to come over for 2 classes face to face, but there will be a digital version of that you can pop along to. So please feel free to come to that as well. But we'd love to welcome you onto campus if you're able to, but also welcome you back into the digital space once you have applied and got your offer from us. I think that's about it. So if that's all right, Jenny, I'll say goodbye to everyone and thank you again for coming, and happily answer questions in the furtherance of time.